Imagine a world where Ken has everything a man could dream of: a happy, thriving family, a beautiful wife named Grace, and children who adore him. Ken is the definition of a gold standard father, a man who looks after his family with every fiber of his being, whisking them away on luxurious vacations during every holiday and treating his wife with such deep, unwavering devotion that he believes he could never, ever do anything to harm her. But while Ken is basking in this domestic bliss, a storm is brewing in the form of a woman named Precious. Precious is a friend of Tony, who happens to be Ken's best friend, and she is harboring a dangerous obsession. She begs Tony to invite Ken to hang out, confessing that ever since they met at a party, she hasn't been able to get him out of her head. Tony, being a loyal friend, warns her that Ken is a married man who loves his wife and kids and tells her point blank not to get between them. But Precious is a master manipulator. She pivots, claiming she just wants to be friends and perhaps do business together, adding that she simply admires how well Ken takes care of his family and wants that same energy in her life. The trap is set the following day when Ken is leaving work to head home. He accidentally runs into Precious, who claims she's just in the area to see a friend. Ken, ever the gentleman, offers her a ride home, but when they reach her gate, the mask slips. Precious asks him if they can hang out on Saturday, but Ken remains firm, telling her he has a wife and kids and his wife would be furious if she found out. Precious plays the victim, acting completely shocked and claiming she had no idea he was even married. Later that night, Precious fumes to her friend Tracy, admitting she skipped work for a plan that failed. She tells Tracy that even though she got the ride she wanted, Ken rubbed his marriage in her face. But instead of being deterred, she confesses she loves how Ken pampers his wife and wants that devotion for herself, leading Tracy to cook up a new, darker plan. Back at home, the contrast is sharp. Ken returns to Grace, kissing her awake and sharing the details of their day before they head to the shower together, a picture of perfect intimacy. But the peace is short-lived because Precious invites Tony to a birthday party, insisting he bring Ken along. Tony is baffled because she just had a celebration 3 months ago, but she insists that was just a celebration, not her real party. At first, Ken refuses to go, but Tony eventually wears him down. However, Ken sets one condition: if he goes, Grace goes with him. When Precious hears this, she is devastated because the entire party was a ruse to get him alone, prompting Tracy to provide yet another scheme. As fate would have it, Ken tells Grace about the invite, but she explains she already has plans for another event that Saturday. The next day, Precious shows up at Ken's office dressed provocatively, and before she can even speak, Ken delivers the news she's been waiting for: Grace isn't coming. Precious pretends to be disappointed, lying that she had made special plans for both of them. The night of the party arrives, and while the music is loud and the guests are celebrating, Ken is miserable. After just a few minutes, he's bored out of his mind and calls Grace to tell her he'll be home in 30 minutes. Precious moves in, begging him to drink with her. He refuses, citing his drive home, but she is relentless and eventually convinces him to start drinking heavily. The scene turns dark as a completely wasted Ken is led to a bedroom by Precious, who begins unbuttoning his shirt while he is too far gone to resist. Back at home, Grace is pacing, worried sick because the 30 minutes he promised have turned into hours. The next morning, Ken wakes up in a cold sweat, naked next to Precious. When he asks if they had sex, she smugly tells him it was the best she's ever had. Shaken and filled with dread, Ken rushes home to apologize, finding Grace and the kids who stayed up all night waiting. He begs for forgiveness and promises it will never happen again. But Precious is not going away. She begins calling him at night, and when Ken realizes it's her, he declines. She calls again and again, even interrupting his family breakfast, but he refuses to answer. Growing desperate and worried that Ken will forget their night together, Precious takes Tracy's advice to confront him in person. Ken's secretary tells him his friend Precious is there to see him, but Ken coldly snaps that she is not his friend and orders the secretary to say he's not around. When he finally leaves the office, he sees her waiting, but he drives away without saying a single word. Furious, Precious goes to Tony, demanding he tell Ken to stop avoiding her. Tony refuses, telling her she's already made Ken's life miserable by getting him drunk and taking advantage of him. Falling into a depression, Precious tries every trick to get his attention until she eventually goes to the hospital. The next day, she tells Tracy the good news: she's pregnant with Ken's baby. Tracy is thrilled, claiming Ken will now have to marry her and move her into his house. Precious storms into Ken's office with the news. Ken tries to pay her off, offering money to be left alone, but she refuses, stating she only wants him. Tony tries to intervene, begging her to abort the baby to save Ken's family, but she is adamant. Even Ken calls her, begging her not to ruin his marriage because he loves his wife, but Precious coldly informs him he is allowed to have a second wife. She begins calling him in the dead of night demanding money, leaving Ken constantly stressed. A change Grace notices, though Ken insists nothing is wrong. The breaking point comes during a quiet family night. Just as the kids go to sleep and Ken and Grace are cuddling, a knock sounds at the door. It's Precious. She walks in and announces to Grace that she is the second wife and she's pregnant. Grace is shattered, unable to comprehend the betrayal. Ken desperately tries to explain that he was drunk and doesn't even remember the night, insisting he didn't marry her, but Grace is too angry to listen, feeling the weight of their history together being crushed. Grace calls her mother, planning to leave, but her mother stops her, warning her that leaving is exactly what Precious wants. She tells Grace to stay and fight for her family at all costs. The nightmare becomes a daily reality. When Ken yells at the watchman for letting a stranger in, Grace intervenes, telling Ken he needs to fix the mess he created instead of blaming the staff. The tension boils over when Precious walks into the living room while Grace and the kids are watching TV, snatches the remote, and changes the channel. When Grace asks for it back, Precious snaps that it's her husband's house and she'll do what she wants. Grace tries to keep her dignity, telling Precious she isn't worth the fight, but Precious tells her if she knows what's good for her, she should leave Ken and the house to her. Days later, Tracy comes over and is openly rude to Grace, telling her she should just give up because Ken and Precious are in love and that Precious is carrying the son Grace never gave him. The insult leads to a physical fight after Grace slaps her. When the kids come home from school, they find their mother crying. They ask why that crazy woman is living there and why their dad is sleeping on the couch, admitting they hate how she treats their mother. Grace tries to protect them, making excuses about their father stretching his back, but the pain is visible. Precious then tries to flex her power over the house help, ordering her to cook, but the help refuses, saying she follows Grace's orders first. When Precious demands Ken fire her, he refuses, standing by the woman who has served them for 3 years. When Grace's mother comes to visit, Precious abuses her and calls her names, but Grace tells her mother to ignore the taunts. Later, in the kitchen, Precious tries to kick Grace and her mother out so she can cook. Grace's mother is ready to fight, but holds back because of the pregnancy. Precious then runs to Ken, demanding he send his mother-in-law back to the village, threatening to kill herself and the baby if he doesn't. Terrified of the threat, Ken tells Grace her mother has to leave. Grace is shocked that he is taking Precious's side, but her mother, having heard everything, realizes Precious is unstable and decides to leave on her own to prevent a tragedy. The children soon tell Grace that Precious has been whispering to them, calling them useless and saying their father is going to kick them out. Grace comforts them, promising their father loves them, but the damage is deep. That night, Grace confronts Ken, pointing out that he hasn't spoken to his own children in months. Ken realizes he can't even remember the last time he bonded with them. Meanwhile, Precious continues to keep Ken awake every night with her crying, asking why he won't love her back after everything she did to get his attention. Ken remains firm, he is a married man and will never love her. He eventually goes to his kids, admitting he made a massive mistake and promising to fix everything. One day, while Grace is at home, the house help rushes and Precious is in serious pain. Despite everything, Grace's compassion wins out and she takes Precious to the hospital. There, the doctor delivers the news, they have lost the baby. Once Precious recovers, the leverage is gone. Ken wastes no time throwing her out of the house forever, warning her never to show her face again. Realizing the gravity of her actions, Precious returns to her own home and ends her friendship with Tracy, recognizing that the bad advice almost destroyed her life. Ken goes to Grace, broken and humbled, and begs for a final chance. Though the scars are deep, Grace finds it in her heart to forgive him. The story ends where it began, with the family reunited, the kids hugging their parents, and the bond finally